Sunday, March 15th, 2015, New York City, Miracles in Manhattan. Now, I was just saying that I didn't go away to Mexico as I was going to. The consequence was that I was here and kind of like everybody else sort of snowed in. And that means that I spent a great deal more time reading chapter 18 than I might have. And I actually wound up typing up 48 pages worth of notes. And I usually hand out you a little booklet of about 20 to 32 pages. And when I got up to 48, I realized that this was so rich that I was going to have to do the same thing I did with 13. So 18 is going to take 2 months instead of 1 month. So today, essentially, and actually chapter 18, which isn't one of the longest chapters, but it's the fifth longest, so that means there's 4 more that are longer than it is, so it's not a short one either. But it kind of divides itself into 2 parts. The 2 parts are that the beginning sections up through the 5th section is pretty much about the world and about the dreaming of the world and the illusions of the world, our fantasies that we have, and how we kind of got stuck here in this world. And then the second part, the last 3 sections, are all on the body and the role of the body in the world. So because it kind of neatly divided itself up that way, so we will do the second half of 18 next time. I remember saying that this would take us 3 years, and I figured out that that is going to mean we will actually end the whole book on either June or July of 2016, depending on whether or not I break another chapter in half. If I don't, it'll be June. If I do, it'll be July. Okay. The conference here in New York City, by the way, for April has been sold out, which is kind of nice in some ways. That hasn't happened before. We've completely sold out on a conference, but that one did. However, if you were thinking about maybe going, just to let you know, we have another event coming up in September, which is at a retreat center called Stony Point, which is just about half an hour north of New York City, going up the Palisades Parkway. And so just not very far from here. And I think the date is, again, it's 17, 18, 19, and 20. Anyhow, there's the latest edition of Miracles Magazine. You should all have a copy of that. And there's an ad for that on page 34. It doesn't have the price, and I'm not quite sure what the price is, but if you go to the website, you can check that out in case you should be. What's nice about it is that some people like to come to New York City from outside, but seeing how most of you guys are New Yorkers, you might actually enjoy getting out of New York City for a few days it's a pretty nice place, Stony Point. The usual process, for those of you who don't know, is that we have 3 sessions of about 50 minutes each, and we take a 10-minute break between each session. I kind of ask that you give me the first half hour or so of the first session especially, but also some of the later sections to cover some of the basic material that we're going to go through. If anybody's interested, we do go out for get a bite to eat afterwards. We have reservations at Saigon Market, which is just 2 blocks down 12th Street and then a half a block to the left. So, shall we get into chapter 18, called the Passing of the Dream? I wanted to do a little bit of review stuff before we kind of go into 18 itself. And you all everybody got their booklets? Okay, good. I'm going to start on the first page. We have seen that there are 2 parts of your mind. One is ruled by the ego and is made up of illusions. The other is the home of the Holy Spirit, where truth abides, where there are no other guides but these 2 choices. So at all times, you can take those reserved signs off those seats over there and just sit wherever you want to. At all times, we're listening to one voice or the other. One voice is totally insane. You know about that one. We all know about that one because actually that tends to dominate our minds. Not only is it insane, it is an illusion, which doesn't have any reality to it, because it is also a fantasy. The other voice, or the voice of the Holy Spirit, which is also referred to in the Course as the voice for God. How many of you began, I know some of you began the workbook lesson for on January 1st. So if you began and you're on 74 today, so without putting anybody on the spot, what's the lesson for today, Dawn? Yeah, God's will, right? So all there is God's will, and happiness means that our minds would be perfectly aligned with the will of God. And that would be the only voice that we would hear. The only voice that would be the voice for God, or the Holy Spirit directing everything. As it is, we also listen to this other insane voice, which tells us really insane things, like that you're no good, and you've got a lot of problems, and there's all kinds of reasons to be worried and anxious. And yet the good news is that we still have this place in us that is a place of absolute peace, that regardless of what the external circumstances of the world are, you can sink down into this place of perfect peace. Sometimes even in the middle of chaos, people will be able to go there, partly because the chaos becomes so chaotic that you realize that there is this opportunity to get into the peace of God. The goal, of course, is peace. It says so. On the way to that peace, the process of the Course is trying to describe for us is a process of gaining knowledge. Now, this is real knowledge. This has nothing to do with the collection of factual information, but it's the knowledge of heaven, or it's the knowledge of God. In fact, we can do an equivalency by where we say that knowledge is equal to heaven. What it says in essence, where I was going, was that the goal, of course, is peace, but the process to get to the peace does require our obtaining knowledge. That's why the Course is a study. And that's why the study is the thing that we do, and the study works. You know, as you get there, as you study this material, we're trying to get our minds corrected so that we're seeing correctly. And once with enough practice, we do start seeing things correctly. And once we start seeing things correctly, then we begin to have peace of mind. It's really that simple. Other processes includes things like meditation, which the Course would also say works and is helpful and may get you to a state of peace. But this actually is going to get you to a state of peace because you know why you're getting to it. You're solving your special relationship problems, for example. Those are being cleared up for you. And you understand that they're being cleared up. I just wrote a little article for the Holy Encounter, which is a newsletter that comes out of the Miracles Distribution Center out in California, which is called Forgiveness Lies in Communication. That's the title of the article. And how just by the whole process of the right kind of communication with each other, but also with the voice for God, enables us to engage in the process of forgiveness. So let's go back to the page 1. So it's knowledge that we're seeking. Knowledge is of God. Beliefs are of the ego. So the ego, we can believe all kinds of things. The fact is, we can believe all kinds of insanities. We have all kinds of religions in this world and all kinds of strange beliefs that can occur as a result of those. Don and I were talking in the car, driving down, about how there are certain churches, Jehovah's Witness, Catholic Church, Mormons, etc., that if you're a part of that, you can be kicked out, you can be excommunicated or defrocked, and that would just be an impossibility in the Course in Miracles, because God is love. It doesn't make any difference what you do. The love isn't there. I mean, the love isn't going to be lost. It's not going to go away, right? There's a line in the Course where it says, God does not condemn. His mind does not work that way. So if his mind doesn't work that way, then our minds wouldn't work that way either. So it really wouldn't make any difference. That doesn't mean that we don't correct. I mean that we don't work on getting correction, but still there's no condemnation for whatever's going on. Okay. So the title of this opening section is the Substitute Reality. Let's go to page 2. And let's actually start reading from the beginning of Substitute Reality. To substitute is to accept instead. If you would but consider exactly what this entails, you would perceive at once how much at variance this is with the goal of the Holy Spirit. The goal the Holy Spirit has given you and would accomplish for you. To substitute is to choose between renouncing the one aspect of the sonship in favor of the other. And then let's also go on down to the bottom part of that page. Here is the answer to every problem that will confront you today and tomorrow and throughout time. In this world, you believe you are sustained by everything but God. You place your faith. Your faith is placed in the most trivial and insane symbols. Pills, money, protective clothing. Now, protective clothing can be understood in lots of different ways, but the way primarily reason we wear clothes is also probably for hiding, right? Thoreau once said, beware of any occupation that requires that you wear special clothes, right? So, but if you wear a uniform, if you're a policeman or a soldier or a doctor or whatever it is, or a clergyman, right? All the clothes that give us definitions to who we are also then become a part of the mask that we inevitably wear in the world as well. I always say, just be comfortable. Do what you like in terms of that sort of thing. Influence, prestige, being liked, knowing the right people, and an endless list of forms of nothingness that you endow with magical powers. This is the way that the ego sees the world. And then we work on all these things, whether it's gaining influence politically or whatever it is, but then that gets us caught up in some sort of game that we play with this insanity. And the top of 3. All these things are your replacement. So the first section here is called the substitute reality. So another word we could say is replacement, substitute. We substitute something else for the love of God. All these things are cherished to ensure a body identification. A body identification. They are songs of praise to the ego. Do not put your faith in the worthless. It will not sustain you. So only the love of God, only the peace of God is going to sustain us and keep us and ensure us, right? And then going on down. To fragment is to exclude. So what happens is that by having a mind distracted by all the things of the world, that's the fragmentation. To fragment is to exclude, and substitution is the strongest defense the ego has for separation. So we separate ourselves by being better than other people, by being wiser than other people, smarter than other people, richer than other people, whatever, driving a nicer car than other people, whatever it is that we do that allows for that, right? So the one emotion where substitution is impossible is love. So love is the Course is a pure thing. It doesn't make it, you can't, we can get it all twisted in romantic love and that sort of thing. But if it's right, if it's really love, and what the Course is saying too is that at the heart, at the core of who each and every one of us are, and this is such a nice thing, we really do love each other. You know, we really do. And that's the way we want to, that's the way when we're comfortable we see each other, right? And it doesn't make any difference who we're looking at. That love is there, right? You can imagine that would have been true for Jesus. Why everybody was so in love with Jesus was that he just radiated the fact that he loved everyone, right? That everyone that he would come in contact with, and it would be very easy for everyone then to fall back in love with him as well, right? So, you know, in the very, very beginning of the Course, it says that the opposite, there's no opposite to love, but if there was an opposite, it would be fear. One of the basic differences between fear and love is that love is permanent and fear is not everlasting. Fear, we can overcome our fears. In fact, as we move deep enough inside us, and that's the other thing that's so important about the Course. This Course is repeatedly asking us to go inside. Go deep inside. The kingdom of heaven is inside you. And the Course actually, through the workbook meditations, lessons for one thing, it's just one way. So if you do the lesson for today, there's nothing but the will of God, right? And you get that identification that is your will. You don't want to do anything except what God's will. That's incredibly peaceful, isn't it? To get to that point, right? Well, you can get to that point, and all the time. Fear, the opposite of that, it seems to be the opposite of that, is both a fragmented and a fragmenting emotion. It seems to take many forms, and each one seems to require a different form of acting out for satisfaction. So we become very, very broken and distorted in that sense. Now let's go to the top of 4. The Course is actually kind of poetic at this point. And now it's talking about all the substitute realities, right? All these, the pills, the money, the status, the influence, whatever it says. Let them all go. Dancing in the wind, dipping and turning, till they disappear from sight far, far outside of you. Remember, the Course also says there's nothing, we'll get to this in here again later too, there's nothing outside of you. By there's nothing outside, I mean the only reality that there is inside you. But this world is a huge distraction because there's all this stuff that constitutes the world. People, occupation, building, car, I mean, all this stuff, which seems to look so, so very, very real that we forget. We forget that we can go inside, going on down. And turn you to the stately calm within. It's always there, even in the most frightening of situations, where in holy stillness dwells the living God you never left and who never left you. The Holy Spirit takes you gently by the hand and retraces with you your mad journey outside yourself, leading you gently back to the truth and safety within. And it is a mad journey that we take outside of ourselves, right? I was I'm working on a chapter for a book on the story of the prodigal son, right? And that's the journey that we kind of we all want to take. We leave the Father, go away, do it on our own. That's kind of like the big, thank you very much, God, I'd really rather do it myself. And then we go off and we try to do that, and it just never works. Because you actually can't live without the Father's love. That really is being broken off from home, from God, from reality. And sometimes when we get really, really broken, in the case of the prodigal son story, for example, when he's at the bottom of the pit eating corn with the pigs, and everything is gone, he's completely wasted his inheritance on wanton living, whatever that is. I think it's doing whatever you want to. Then when it's all gone, he has this revelatory experience. Now thank God for the revelatory experience. That's always there for us. And the revelatory experience is, I can go home. I can go home. And the point is that you can go home anytime. All you got to do to go home is just stop and say, I want to go home. I want to. That's where the peace is. So I will go home. Right? And that's what he does. And then what's interesting about that particular story is, although he goes home and he says, Father, I've sinned against you before heaven. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me one of your servants. The Father just completely ignores that. It doesn't make any difference where he went or what he did. The only thing that makes any difference is that he's home. He's back. So because this was the most important part. There's actually a line in the Course where it says, God, and don't take this literally, weeps for us, for his lost children. Now, God doesn't weep. God doesn't have tear ducts. It doesn't have a face in that sense that can weeps. But as long as we're missing, we are missing as a part of the wholeness of God, that's what it means by the weeping. But it's really we who weep because we have broken ourselves off by running away from home. We literally run away from home. That's what we're all doing here in this world, this insane world. We made it up. We made up the whole thing. We made up the body. We made up the world. We made up the idea that it's possible. And one of the basic points of the Course is what the atonement is about, is that it's impossible to leave home. But we don't see that. You don't realize that you can't actually leave home until, like in the morning, you wake up and you're in your bed and you had this weird dream, but the truth of the matter is you never went anywhere. The whole idea was that. It was an idea. The idea that we left home. That's all it ever was. And ideas, in that sense, is just a belief or a thought. And it has no reality in it. So if it has no reality in it, then all we do is we're really, really grateful that we're home and back with our Father. I have a friend, by the way, Phyllis Atwater, whether anybody knows PMH Atwater. She's written a dozen books on near-death experiences, and she specialized in a book she wrote about children's near-death experiences, right? And the children have different near-death experiences than adults do. And one of the most interesting things is that children are more likely to see God and they see God, by the way, as a man. It's almost always a man, right? But a beneficent, loving, somebody they can crawl up on the lap of. Someone with whom they feel safe with, someone that they get this 100% assurance of protection from, right? And it's not a matter of gender at all. It's just that would be natural for a child to have to come up with an image like that. I think we all tend to see, by the way, what we tend to think that we're going to see. So it wouldn't be surprising that a child would have that kind of image, right? But it's something that's all protective, and they feel very, very comfortable, very much at home. It's like a father or a grandfather, some kind of a grandfatherly kind of an image. They're back with it. Let's go to page 5 and the undoing of fear. So, you who believe that God is fear made but one substitution. It has taken many forms, we could say a myriad of forms, because it was the substitution of illusion for truth, of fragmentation for wholeness. It has become so splintered and subdivided and divided again over and over that it is now almost impossible to perceive it once was one and still is what it was. So the whole world is just, it's just broken. Fragmentation into fragmentation into fragmentation. That's how we have, there's over 1,000, 2,000-3,000 different religious denominations in the United States. And all these religious denominations, just, you can take one, do you know how many, there are hundreds of Baptists. I mean, you just start off and you've got one thing, but then somebody else has a little bit of a different idea. So we have the International Baptists or the Southern Baptists or the whatever kind of form that man wants to break it into. All the time there's only one thing. Right? So that's why we're dreaming. Let's go down to the bottom of 5. Shut off from yourself, which remains aware of its likeness to its creator, yourself seems to sleep, while the part of your mind that weaves illusion in its sleep appears to be awake. It appears to be awake. So a little bit later on in here I talk about sleepwalking. Sleepwalking is kind of part of what we do in this world. I think, by the way, it's interesting, there are a lot of other systems like A Course in Miracles that have been around. Like, anybody here ever studied Gurdjieff, G.I. Gurdjieff? Are familiar with Gurdjieff? I got at least one, Patrick, and all right, 2, 3, 4. That was one of his positions. His thought was that most people actually are sleepwalking. Now, what we mean by sleepwalking is they kind of live a kind of a repetitive, ritualistic, daily life process by what, you ever feel this, by the way, that you go to bed and you get up and you have a little ritual that you go through. Everybody's got probably that first hour is just you do things in a certain order. You follow that ritual. You brush your teeth before you shower before you brush your teeth. Whatever the ritual is that you go through, and then you go to work and you do what you do, and then you come home and you have a glass of wine and you watch TV and you go to bed and you start the process over again, and it sort of becomes the monotony of the days. And especially true if you get in, like if you're in prison. Think of them, everything is run by bells and by the clock, and you get up at 6 o'clock, and at 4 o'clock you do this, and at 5 o'clock you do that, and there's no kind of way of breaking out of that prison which we create for ourselves individually. Last night, I must admit that a part of my missing piece of education was Chinese history. Somewhere or another I missed getting to know about Chinese history. So I was watching it. Anybody see this show on 13? It's talking about the Ming Dynasty and the Qing dynasties, etc., the different dynasties. And it was really interesting how, like, particularly during let's say the Ming Dynasty, part of what they thought, they understood that everything was to be ruled by heaven, but they created a ritual by which, like take the emperor, for example. His whole daily life was completely ritualized. He would wake at a certain time in a certain way, and the way that it was done is that 6 men would come in and they would bow in front of the bed and begin to chant to wake him up, right? And so he'd wake up with these 6 men chanting near his bed, and then they would get up and then they would dress him, and they would, they're very formally about how the dress of the, would go on him, and then what he would do next, and they would follow him out in a certain order, and it was all ritualized, but also it was broken. The whole system was kind of a broken system, which was eventually doomed to failure. And eventually they were trying to get in order with heaven, but they were creating the ego's version of heaven rather than heaven as it is in terms of what it is inside of us, right? So we do that. We build this system, but then the system becomes an insane system. And we don't even realize that that's an insane system, which is always destined to fail. That's why then eventually you get to these splits and the congregations break off from another congregation and they go off to start doing it. They realize that the system was insane, and so then everything falls apart and you start another system over again. So now we have communism, which is just another system, which is also doomed to failure. The only system that will work, and the Course never uses this terminology, but actually if it would be true, we could call it a theocracy. By that I mean to literally following the will of God in our lives, right? And that's what the Course is trying to help us to do. Yes, Brooke?
When you're talking about capitalism as a system sorry, brain's left.
Yeah, take the mic, otherwise you're not going to get on.
When you spoke of communism being a system that's doomed to failure, and we've seen that historically, does that stand to reason that capitalism and democracy are also insane systems that have their faults and their flaws and they're doomed to failure? And they run their course?
Sure. And you see that in different things like depressions, right? And how stock markets fall apart, and then we have to build it back up again, and we fix the broken parts to it and reconstruct it. The good part is that we're always, by finding the flaws, we were able to kind of fix some of the flaws, but then the other flaws, as long as power and greed, et cetera, are finding the way, and they do find the way in the back door, then again there'll be something will cause the system to collapse. And then all systems, it doesn't make any difference what. All egos are doomed to fail. That's what the Course is saying is, we as egos we build systems. So, the good news is that will fail, right? And if it fails big time, you might have a revelatory experience. I've mentioned before, and I won't go into it. It just came out, by the way, the Watkins Review thing. Every year, Watkins, which is a magazine that's produced by Watkins Bookstore in London, comes out with the 100 top spiritual leaders in the world. Well, they just came out with their January, February issue. I just get mine, but seeing how it comes from England, it gets here a little bit late. And so they have a list of the primary spiritual leaders in the world, and when you look at these spiritual leaders and you ask how they came to their awakening experiences time after time again, it happened because they crashed and burned first. And then after the crashing and the burning, there came a revelation. But then the Course is also going to say, we're going to see this in some of the stuff that we're going to be reading here, but you got to watch. You got to be really, really careful that the insanity doesn't find a way to creep back in again. Because the insanity can very easily creep back in again. It sort of sneaks in the back door, and the next thing you know, you get into an authoritarian kind of position or something. That's why, in a way, the Course in Miracles says some of your greatest advances have been in some of your biggest setbacks. And some of what you regarded as your biggest setbacks have been your greatest advances. So, and you really don't kind of know which one of those are until you begin to understand what the... Let's say that you get promoted to a higher position at your job, and you're now making more money, and you have more authority, which means that you are in charge of more people, which may also mean that you're in charge of more insanity, right? Which means that you're going to have more to deal with. But then that could become very, very difficult for you. Managing people can become a very difficult position to be in. Right? You may have more authority, you may have more money, you may have more prestige, but your sanity may be tempted to split off. You may get angry or upset or feel like you have to start firing people, and now you're really even more insane than you were before. An advancement has become a setback. Right? On the other hand, a setback could become a great advancement if it brings you closer to the heart of God. Lena?
Sorry, we're sorry to share that illustrates that perfectly. So
Oh, wait. We got to give you over here. Sorry about this, folks, but it really doesn't work on YouTube without the mic.
Okay, so I have a brief story to share that illustrates the principle perfectly. maybe 3 weeks ago, I gave a lecture on spiritual romance. And I really felt that this was an area of expertise for me because I've experienced divorces and breakup, and I've learned a lot. So I give my lecture Friday night, and I come home, and my ego begins to convince me that it had been the worst lecture that I had ever given, and really feeling down and really feeling badly about myself. You know, how could I fail my calling? How could I fail God? How could I fail the people that had attended? And you know, that ego had a hold on me for about a day. The next day, I get a phone call from the spiritual store where I had given my lecture. And the man that had attended my lecture called them the next morning, said after the lecture, he said that he went home and he went to sleep and he dreamt of his ex-wife. And he awakened the next morning with the most powerful sense of peace and felt he had been healed from something he had been holding on to for years. So what I considered was my failure, what my ego considered was the worst lecture ever, I had actually been a healing experience for someone else.
Yeah.
We don't know what anything is for.
No, you don't. And you never know. That's really, really true. Okay, let's go to page 6. Okay. At the top, reading from the course again. Can all this arise from holding grievances? Now, what it's talking about, all the projections that we're throwing out upon to the world. Oh yes, for he who holds grievances denies he was created by love, and his creator has become fearful to him in his dream of hate. Who can dream of hatred and not fear God? And then also down the next middle part, that one error. So that one error is the thought that it's possible to be separated from God, okay? That it's possible to be broken off. That one error which brought truth to illusion, infinity to time, and life to death, was all you ever made. Your whole world rests upon it. Everything you see reflects it, and every special relationship that you've ever made is part of it, which is just simply getting us more and more caught within the illusion. And the bottom of 6, you may be surprised to hear how very different is reality from what you see. You do not realize the magnitude of that one error. Again, the error is breaking away from God. Everybody who, part of the book I'm working on right now, I'm reading a lot of near-death experiences as a preparation for writing this. Time after time after time again, folks who have these experiences are going to say that what they saw is so much more real than what we call reality, that this world pales, fades completely. It's just thousands of times more real. That's kind of hard for us to imagine what thousands of times more real would be, but they are talking about it being thousands of, that is reality, and especially when it's a taste of, and not all near-death experiences are heavenly experiences, but especially when in the cases where it is a kind of heavenly experience. I think in my particular case, when I had a death experience in '76, it was a very, very difficult experience. In good part because it was an ego death experience. And when the ego faces death, it's not fun at all because you're losing everything. I mean, you're losing absolutely everything that you thought was real. But you don't realize that what you have to do is to let everything go. Because once you let everything go, there's nothing you can take with you. Once you let everything go, then the first thought is, well, I'm still here. I mean, you can't destroy life itself. If God is life, that's the definition for God. God is life. So the life has not been, spirit cannot be destroyed. Mind cannot be destroyed. That's the one thing that we cannot get rid of, but we can get rid of all the trappings and all that junk about who we thought we were. All the uniforms and the titles and the names and the special relationships and all that stuff that seems so, that occupies our minds. And that's why the Course is trying to help us to get free of special relationships, because the special relationship seems to be the thing which is most occupies our minds. Without asking anybody, how many of you spend time thinking about relationships at work when you're not working? Right? I mean, but it's what's going on in the mind as you're driving the car and brushing your teeth, and right? So it becomes these obsessions. So it looks like it's something real. And the Course is saying, let them go dancing and so just forget about all this stuff, because it's literally just a distraction. It's your insane mind that you're looking at. You know. So it's just let the insane mind go. That's what, let it be what it is, whatever it is. And then you can have this opportunity to get back to peace a little bit. But then in the process for that is forgiveness. What you're actually doing is you're forgiving yourself for having get caught up in that illusion. You're forgiving yourself for allowing that distraction to become real to you. Allowing that relationship to be, I don't mean that you don't have the relationship. There's a line in the section on special relationships that you're still going to have the relationship. But the relationship will change because you've changed. You've changed your mind about this. This person may still be very much a part of your life now and even forever in some cases, right? If it's a relative or something like that there's no way to to get away from, nor would you want to. But the way you see it is completely changed. Largely because you've done, that's why we get the end of this chapter, which we'll do next time, is called I Need Do Nothing, that great section. Is I need do nothing. There's nothing you need to do except not to allow the split, the insanity of your mind to infect your mind to the point that it makes you sick. Right? And that's what we do. We allow it, this a little piece of it creeps in, and then it's like an infection. It really is like an infection. Or it's something that we then feed. It's like a cancer that starts growing, but it can't grow if you don't feed it. You can't grow if you don't give it energy. That's why the Course is all about redirecting the mind, redirecting the energy. Let's go to 7 for a few moments. So, skipping the first two parts of it. Nothing you have seen begins to show you the enormity of the original error, which seemed to cast you out of heaven, to shatter knowledge into meaningless bits of disunited perception, and to force you to make further substitutions. That was the first projection of error outward. We talked about it last time as like the Big Bang, actually, literally the Big Bang. It's what's on the outside. The world arose to hide it and became the screen on which it was projected and drawn between you and the truth. For truth extends inward. That's a very important point. Where the idea of loss is meaningless and only increases conceivable. Always remember, when you start going insane, insanity is something which is outside of you. That's literally a line from the Course, all right? Insanity is outside you. Sanity is inside you. Sanity is inside, insanity is outside. So the more we get caught in the world, and in thinking that something in the world is real, and something in the world especially that needs to be fought against, that needs to be stopped, in some way, somebody, and the more we allow that insanity to infest us, the more insane we are. And then you're going to look for some insane means of trying to correct it on the outside. There's nothing outside of you. It's a very important point. It's only inside. And sanity is inside, because the kingdom of heaven is inside you. It's just, it's a matter of redirection of energy. Stop looking out only, begin to look in, because that's where the peace of God is. Peace of God is inside you. Let's go a little further with this here, right? Where truth extends inward, where the idea of loss is meaningless and only increase is conceivable. Okay? Let's go to page 8. For truth brought to this could only remain in quiet and take no part in all the mad projections by which this world was made. Truth, of course, says, waits on welcome, not on time. So if it waits on welcome, not on time, it's just a matter of how soon will I welcome the truth. How soon will I be able to say, this is the way I want to go? Going down on 8. Call it not sin, but madness, for such it was, and so it still remains. Invest it not with guilt, for guilt implies it was accomplished in reality. So when we invest it in guilt, we're saying it's bad, it's wrong, it shouldn't happen, it shouldn't be that way, there's a problem here. That's investing it in guilt. But then the guilt is inside my mind. And the guilt can only be fixed inside my mind. It can't be fixed in the world itself, right? And above all, be not afraid of it. Now this is very, very important. Don't be afraid to look at the fear. Don't be afraid to look at the terror that's inside you. In fact, as you do look at it, because actually the more that you look at it, the more you're going to be able to take the energy away from it. You're not looking at it to breed it. You're looking at it to realize that it's irrational. You're looking at this to realize that it is insane. It's insane to be thinking this way. It's insane to be thinking that there's something wrong with my brother. Now, maybe on the surface, this can be a real challenge, because on the surface of the thing, it may very well. But remember a moment ago I said, we really do love each other. So the thing is to be able to get past that surface to the truth of the reality that's inside. Deep enough down, it's there. And we'll go a little further on, 8. When you seem to see some twisted form of the original error, again, the original error is the thought that we can be separate from God, rising to frighten you, say, God is not fear but love, and it will disappear. Could you remember that? It is, God is not fear but love. So it's easy to get frightened in this world. It's easy to get disgusted with this world. It's easy to get disgusted with ourselves, and thinking that we can't change, and that we're going to stay trapped in this sleepwalking world that we're sleepwalking through. Remember, the Course tells us the past is not in you. It's not about time. It's never about the past, nor is it ever about anyone else's past. There was a lady here last time, she's not here this time, I think, but who was sitting on the back row, who asked a question, and I got thinking about a better answer than I gave her. Sometimes that happens afterwards. She asked about being able to see her baby that was innocent. Was it you? No, she was sitting about where you were sitting. She was wearing glasses. And why was it that she was so easy? Why was it so easy for her to see the innocence in her baby? All right? Well, first of all, it's a baby. And we just, instantaneously, we're going to fall in love with babies. Instantaneously, we're going to be able to see the innocence there, because, first of all, they don't even have a history. They haven't. She says, my baby can throw up on me, and I love it. Yeah, remember that? Well, of course. Of course you love it. Now, when she's 13 or 14 years old and screaming, "I hate you," it may be a little bit more of a challenge. Then that kind of verbal throwing up. But that's what the Course is asking us to do, is to be able to see that innocence there regardless.
So a few hours after your workshop, I was guided to actually my interpretation and my answer to that question. And basically, the Course says it's easier to feel love towards our children because we do not see them as separate from ourselves. They are a physical part of who we are. And the Course I just opened, it says here, almost like animals, think of the love of animals for their offspring and the need they feel to protect them. That is because they regard them as part of themselves. No one dismisses something he considers part of himself.
Right. Now that same animal, by the way, when at some point we'll kick him out of the nest. But, huh?
It's also the ego.
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mike.
So the other thing we created was our ego, and it's hard for us to become detached from it too. So that was just a thought I got from
Right.
that too.
It's very hard to become detached from it. That's why we need this to practice, looking at it, seeing that it's there. See, most of the time with most folks, we aren't even aware of it. We're just in it. And we're just kind of in it all the time. So there's no objectivity.
So like a fish in water.
Yes, like a fish in water, right. So you don't even see, you're living in the insane world. You realize it's an insane world, and you don't see any way out of it. There's no exit from it because you're so immersed in it, right? Eric, give the mic to Mary. You can't raise your hand.
We are it. We think we are it.
Yes.
That's what, it's that that ego voice in the head, and then we think that voice is who we are because it's presenting itself as who we are.
Right. It's dominant, So the Course is just asking us to see that there's a real other possibility. And we're training that other possibility. We're breeding that other possibility. Peace. Just simple peace. You don't have to be anything. You don't have to do anything. You can just relax kind of in the arms of God. And then it really does work out fine. We'll just do a tiny bit more and we'll take our first break. Okay, the bottom of 8. So, inward is sanity. I was saying this a moment ago, but here it is from the Course. Inward is sanity, insanity is outside you. You but believe it's the other way. Right? We think that we're sane, and the world is crazy. But the world is crazy, but but we're crazy too, insofar as we participate in it, and so far as we go along with it. As someone once wisely said, "If you don't go within, you go without." Now that's a very important point. If you don't go within, you go without. And there's nothing out there, is what the Course is saying. There's nothing out, I've said it 4 times already this morning. There's nothing outside you. It's only in you. Again, that's why the Course in Miracles is a study. And the more you study, reflect, go within, do the workbook lessons, whatever you're doing, the more it begins to become clear, and the more you begin to see it, and the more you begin to get it, the more you begin to kind of just relax into it. And now let's just do one more quote from the top of 9, and then we'll take our break. So the Course repeatedly tries to direct our attention inside. It says, heaven is inside you, the Holy Spirit is inside you, the vision of Christ is inside you, peace comes from deep inside you. These are just all phrases from the Course. The atonement can only be accepted within you by releasing the inner light. It says something else. It says, light is inside you. Light does not come from outside. Light comes from inside. That's very important. Let's take our first 10-minute break.